Welcome back to our channel Time for Learn. The topic of this video is sexual reproduction in flowering plant. The reproductive parts of an angiosperm are located in the flower. Sepals, petals, stamens and carpels are the different parts of a typical flower. Stamens and carpels are the reproductive parts of a flower which contain germ cells. There are bisexual and unisexual flowers. The flower may be unisexual when it contains either stamens or carpels. A flower may be bisexual when it contains both stamens or carpels. Stamen is the male reproductive part and it produces pollen grains. A reproductive part called carpel is present in the center of a flower and it is the female reproductive part. It is made up of three parts. The swollen bottom part is ovary, middle elongated part is the style and the terminal part which may be sticky is the stigma. The ovary contains ovules and each ovule has an egg cell. The male germ cell produced by pollen grain fuses with the female gamete present in the ovule. This fusion of germ cells or fertilization gives us the zygote which is capable to grow into a new plant. For that, the pollen needs to be transferred from stamen to the stigma. Thus, the transfer of pollen from anther to stigma is known as pollination. If this transfer of pollen occurs in the same flower, it is referred to as self-pollination. If the pollen is transferred from one flower to another, it is known as cross-pollination. The pollination is achieved by agents like wind, water or animals. The first step is the pollination, then the pollen germination. When the pollen left on the stigma, it starts to germinate and grows pollen tube towards the egg cell. It is the pathway for sperm to reach the egg. Then the penetration of pollen tube into the ovule. Now the pollen tube reaches the ovule. The next step is the fertilization. After successfully penetrating into the ovule, the sperm travels through the tube to fertilize the egg. Most flower-bearing plants undergo double fertilization in which the polar nuclei and the egg in the ovule are fertilized. After fertilization, zygote is formed. The zygote divides several times to form an embryo within the ovule. The ovule develops a tough coat and is gradually converted into a seed. The ovary grows and ripens to form a fruit. Other floral parts like petals, sepals, stamens, style and stigma may be fall off. Let us summarize the topic. Pollination is a process in which the transfer of pollen grains from a flower's male anther to its female stigma. It is a fundamental aspect of a plant reproduction. When the pollen grains lands on the stigma, a pollen tube develops down through the style to the ovary. It travels along the pollen tube and fertilizes the nucleus in the ovule. The fertilized ovule develops into a seed. The embryo in the seed which carries genetic material from both parents. And the ovary gives rise to the fruit. It is a time to wind up. Thank you.